you. Nice to see you, Greg.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, Chauncey, it's so good to see you. And first I want to say good morning because I know it's early in your part of the world where you are, south of the equator. And I want to thank you so much for making the time in your day to help us out today. And I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching this, our global community, our global family. We've worked really hard to put this together for you, and I think you're going to enjoy what we're going to do this next 90 minutes or so. So, Chauncey, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And I want to take time to welcome everybody from around the globe that's joining us on this discussion and webinar today, from chaos to resilience. And I believe that there is just such a need for this right now and such a calling for it. And so I wanted to acknowledge you and thank you for putting this course together. And I want to welcome everybody that is familiar with your work as well, that have been following you for, I think, almost 35 years now from around the globe. And for people that are new to your work, they're in just for such a treat today. So thank you so much for being with us all. It's going to be a very inspiring conversation.
Okay, just one more. There is a whole team working to put this together. We have a team in South Florida. We have a team in Southern California in the San Diego area. We have a broadcast team south of Seattle, Washington. You are south of the equator. I won't give your secret location away. And I'm coming from my home and studio office in the high deserts of northern New Mexico, just outside of Santa Fe. So I want our viewers just to know that it takes a whole team to put something like this together, and I just wanted to acknowledge everyone. So thank you. And Chauncey, we all want to know who you are. Tell us who you are.
Oh, well, yeah. So I'm a meditation teacher and a mindfulness coach and also a presenter based in, I can say that I'm in Sydney, Australia. And it was beautiful driving over the Harbour Bridge this morning to get to the studio. And so, yeah, I've been on this journey for about 12 years now and been very grateful to have traveled around the world, learning various techniques and working with incredible groups, high performance groups around the world, and being part of scientific studies to do with meditation and mindfulness and how we can rewire the system and our brain. And that's been really great. So to do with regrowing telomeres, the end strands of our DNA, and GDB testing, which is, the energy systems of the body, and heart math, which of course you're very familiar with. And so I consider myself very blessed and created the online series Uncovering the Sacred as well, speaking to leaders in science and spirituality on the power within us that creates our reality. And of course I got to interview you in London, so that was really fantastic as well. Yeah.
So yeah, well, we have a history together, and that's why I invited you. And I think you're the perfect person to lead us through what can be a complex conversation, but I think it will be very simple because of the way we're going to lay this out today.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know that today is certainly really highlighting that adaptiveness with resilience, because as we know, so much has shifted and changed in the world, including the way that people would be able to access your information. And so much of what you do is in live conferences, and obviously just overnight, so much of that changed. And this is one silver lining that we can really look at through this pandemic. I heard you say the other day, if you're going to have a global pandemic, let it be in the time of technology. And so because of that, now so many more people will be able to reach you and hear your message. And one thing that I love about the work you do, and why I'm so honored to be a part of Team Braden, is that you really do listen to people that follow you. And I was reading, even in your book, when you changed the title of your book, The Turning Point, to basically looking at techniques and resilience techniques people can actually dive into, and changed it to resilience of the heart, because you know that people need to get straight to the point at the moment, and people want to know why we're living in these times of extremes and what they can do about it. And the fact that you've now created something where people can access these techniques is really wonderful. So thank you for listening to your audience so well as well, because a lot of people have approached me saying, when's Gregg going to do something? What's he going to do? Because people really do look to you for a grounding and wisdom. So I'm excited for today, really, really excited.
Well, thank you for that, Chauncey. You know, I'm a student of listening. I have learned over the years, there's a skill to listen rather than trying to formulate your response to what someone else is saying before they finish saying it. And I'm a student of that. I'm learning to become an even better listener. And I do listen to my audience, and that's why we're doing what we're doing today. Me, my office, my organization, we have been inundated with questions about what in the world is going on in the world, what's causing what's going on in the world, what can we do about it to make our lives better. And it has led me to touch upon a body of work that I typically do not offer in this format. So in the time we have together today, I want to make good use of our time today. We're going to talk a lot about what's happening, the triggers, what's causing our time of extremes, what it means, what we can expect, and I think perhaps most importantly, what can we do about this? And that's where I'm going to invite you to skillfully and masterfully guide us through the corridors of this conversation to keep us on track. So thank you.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I think from our conversation the other day, I was really we were talking about the definition of resilience and the traditional definitions of resilience and how that is really changing. And it made me think about when I was in high school and I had a chemistry class, and they taught us the difference between a chemical reaction and a physical reaction, and with a piece of toast, and that once you've started cooking that piece of bread, it becomes toast, and it's not possible to change it back to the white fluffy substance that it was. And I was thinking that is, for me, a really great analogy about what is going on now. We can't go back to what was, and so many people have been going, when's it going to go back to normal? And from our conversation as well, it's like it's not going back to normal. So therefore, how can we really witness, accept, and be present with what is happening in the world right now, and then have healthy ways to be able to deal with that? And so that's definitely what we're going to be stepping into today as well.
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to do, let's just talk about the extremes. Are you okay if we talk about that first? Can we do it that way?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what, if you have followed my work in the past, you know that this is almost the 36th year that I've offered this work in one form or another. And what I'll say is I'm a scientist. I'm a degreed earth scientist, a geologist. I have a strong background in the geophysics as well as in the life sciences, because I was an ocean science major before I became a geologist. So marine biology to marine geology to geology. And one of the things I learned, Chauncey, as a scientist, is that we as scientists have been conditioned to look at what happens in the world in terms of boxes that we can be comfortable studying. So we call those boxes like chemistry and geology and biology and physics. And while it's good to study those boxes, the truth is, the reality is that nature doesn't know about those boxes. We have a world, we have life. And if we are truly going to understand and become masters of our experience, we've got to cross those traditional boundaries that have separated the sciences in the past, and in many respects kept us separate from understanding our own experience in the world. I know it sounds a little nebulous. I'm just going to give an example. Let me just give an example of what I'm saying here. I remember in the late 1970s, early 1980s, as a geologist, I was watching the magnetic fields of the Earth go through very rapid shifts. They're continuing right now. the magnetic fields of our planet are shifting. And my question to my geological colleagues, I said, wow, the magnetic fields of the Earth are changing. What does that mean for us? What's it mean for humans? And they had their little geology blinders on, and they said, you know, don't ask me. I'm a geologist. Go ask a biologist. So I asked my biology friends, I'd say, you know, the magnetic fields of the Earth are changing. What does that mean? And they'd say, hell, we don't know. We're biologists. We're not taught to think in terms of the effects of Earth upon living systems. Now, this was in the 70s and 80s. It's changing. It's changing slowly, but it has a lot to do with what we're going to talk about today. So that's why I wanted to use that example, because we are, in fact, living a time of extremes. Now, I know that's not new for anyone watching us. People know, even the people that used to resist the fact that something is different now are asking what's going on. Everybody knows something's up. The question is, what's up? So I, as a scientist, I'm a systems thinker, first of all. And what that means is I tend to look at the big picture first, the big picture. I mean, I like to go out into the cosmos and see how all these cosmic systems are working. Then I like to leave that behind and go into the nano instant of right now and what's happening in my life and your life and my community's life and how it's being influenced by what's happening in the cosmos. So I think, what do you think, Chauncey? Can we maybe begin just quickly with a big picture?
Yes.
You okay if we do it that way?
Is it okay? Would it be okay with you if I could introduce your background to the people that may be listening to you for the first time? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. I think there are probably some people who are very familiar with me and my work, and a lot of circles, people have no idea of what I've been doing for the last 36 years.
Yeah.
So sure. Thank you for that, Chauncey. I appreciate that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I would just love to take that time. So because everything that you've done is so important, and that's what's brought us all in to this conversation today. So I'd love to take a moment to do that. And then I'm going to ask you lots of questions about the times of extremes and and what we can do to be able to cope with that. So I'm just going to take a moment. So for everybody at home, I would just love to formally also introduce Gregg, and I'm going to read from his biography word for word so that I can really honour that for him. So Gregg Braden, who you can see on the screen right now, he's a 5-time New York Times best-selling author, scientist and pioneer, bridging science, spirituality, social policy and human potential. From 1979 to 91, Gregg worked as a problem solver during times of crisis for Fortune 500 companies, including Cisco Systems, where he became the first technical operations manager in 1991. He continues problem solving today as he merges modern science and the wisdom of our past to reveal real-world solutions to the issues that challenge our times. To date, his research has led to 15 film credits. And by the way, that's how I first discovered you, was on the film You Can Heal Your Life. So that's just a note in the corner. Where am I? I've lost my place. And 12 award-winning books now published in over 40 languages. That's something I do notice. As soon as you announce something, so many people from all around the world say, is it going to be in Portuguese? Is it going to be in German? Is it going to be? So you're really, really far-reaching. Gregg is a member of visionary organisations and think tanks, including the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the Arlington Institute. He's presented his discoveries in over 30 countries on 6 continents and has been invited to speak to the United Nations, which is amazing, by the way. Everybody needs to see that speech. Fortune 500 companies and the US military. The United Kingdom's Watkins Journal lists Gregg among the top 100 of the world's most spiritually influential living people for the 7th consecutive year. Congratulations. And he is a 2020 nominee for the prestigious Templeton Award, established to honour outstanding individuals who have devoted their talents to expanding our vision of human purpose and ultimate reality. So thank you, Gregg. I just wanted to make sure that we had passed that information on to people that were new to you today.
Thank
you're
you.
amazing.
Thank you, Chauncey.
You're one of my favourite people
I appreciate
in the whole
that.
world. So.
No, I appreciate it, and I especially appreciate the part from the Watkins Journal that they honor living people. But I like that affirmation that I'm a living person that's receiving.
I was like, oh yes, no, that's what it says. Living people.
Important.
And I've actually known you for a few years now. We got to travel to the Holy Land of Israel together as well. And that was a real blessing. And as soon as I saw that tour come up, everything within me lit up like a Christmas tree. And I knew that you were the only person in the world I would want to travel to that land with. And it was beyond all of my expectations. And your kindness to the group and the way you watched over us, the flock, and the wisdom that you imparted, it was incredible. And so for everyone out there, as soon as we're able to travel again, if you can travel to ancient sites with Gregg, I highly recommend it. It's life-changing. And then we also got to work together in New Mexico, which was fantastic. Yeah. Really, really wonderful. So yes, let's get back to the times of extremes. I just wanted to take that moment just to explain a few things to people. But can I ask you, back to the time of extremes, what is it that we can expect right now, and how can we make life easier in these times?
Sure. Well, thank you for the introduction and for the review of my life. It's always interesting to hear someone else read your life accomplishments. So, and I'm not finished yet. So I have to say, someone wanted to do a Life Achievement Award for me, and I said, you cannot do that because I'm not finished yet. You can't give me my lifetime achievement. It's still happening.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
What I'd like to
it's
do.
Unfolding.
What I'd like to do, so Rob, if you would please bring up our first slide, please. I want to talk about cycles of time. What we now know as scientists is that we are living a rare convergence. We in the world right now, we are living a rare convergence of multiple nested cycles, natural rhythms that change the way that we think, they change the way that we live. And the three primary rhythms that are driving the changes in the world right now, I'm going to mention them briefly, and then I'll tell you where you can see more information about this at no charge. But the first one, Rob, if we could bring up the slide number 2, please, I appreciate it. The first of these is climate. Now, we all know that climate is changing. As a geologist, I want to be very clear on where I am personally on this. Climate change is a fact. That's the whole point. It is a fact, and we need to change the way we think and live so that the climate change has less of an impact on our lives. It's clinging to an old way of thinking and living in the presence of a cycle that no longer supports that way of thinking and living. That's where the problem comes from. That's where the suffering comes from. So what I'd like for you to see on the screen right now, these are charts taken from the ice cores, and these particular ice cores were in Antarctica. Some of you are familiar with ice cores, some are not. The gift of an ice core is that when scientists drill down through hundreds and thousands of layers of ice that has been deposited year after year after year, each layer of ice contains information about what was happening to Earth on that year. So we can learn about things like how strong the sun was, how warm the temperatures were, how cool the temperatures were, how high the sea level was, what the magnetic fields of the Earth were doing, all of that and more we can learn from the ice cores. So what you're looking at on the screen are two primary ice cores. On top is blue, and the one below that is green. The one on blue, it's called the ep16 ice core. The one below is called Vostok, very famous locations in Antarctica. So what I'd like to call your attention to, on the left-hand side of the screen is present day. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that the data goes back over 400,000 years before today. It's called BP, before present. So we're looking at a continuous record of the warming and the cooling. This is what we're seeing on these ice cores for over 400,000 years. And what you see is there is obviously a rhythm of warming and cooling, warming and cooling. It's been happening for a long time. Right at the 200,000 year mark, you also see a blue vertical line. That line I put there because this is when anatomically modern humans emerged on Earth. We mysteriously appeared on Earth. I've written books about it. We do workshops about our origin and what the DNA science is telling us. But the point is that we appeared 200,000 years ago, and these cycles were happening at least 200,000 years before humans appeared on Earth. What that tells us is that humans are not the cause of climate change. I know that is an unpopular message in some circles. It is also based upon the evidence. This is what the evidence shows. Humans did not cause the climate change. Humans have definitely contributed to the climate change. Since we didn't cause it, it's very unlikely that we can stop it. And for that reason, it makes tremendous sense to adapt to it. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. So where are we right now? If you look to the left, there's a blue arrow that says 2020. We are right there where that arrow is pointing. We are in what the chart says should be a warming cycle. And according to the rhythms, we should be in a warming cycle. If you look at the warming in the past, what we're experiencing now is nothing compared to what was happening in the past. When you look at the temperatures, let's see, in the 100,000, a little over 100,000 years ago, you can see it was much warmer than it is right now. It's what happens after the warming. Typically, that's the problem. It's the cooling, and we are now in a cooling phase. A lot of controversy about this. I'm going to talk about it in just a moment. So I want you to see that this in of itself would change the way we think and live, because when the climate changes, it changes the weather. And when the weather changes, it changes when it's hot, when it's cold, when the seasons begin, when the seasons end, when it rains, when it snows. That determines when we grow our food, how we grow our food. It determines where people live and how people live as populations migrate, all being directed through this climate cycle. So as a geologist, I could spend our whole 90 minutes talking, and I would love to. So I want you to know everything I'm going to say right now. If you go, don't do it now, but when you get a chance, go to YouTube. The Gaia organization, the Gaia film organization, I've done a series with them called Missing Links. Episode 1 of season 1 at absolutely no charge is available on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, Gregg Braden, Missing Links season 1, and you will see more information about what I'm talking about right now, and some things I can't show you right now. So that you can have more of that information. If this were all that were happening, it would be a big deal. It's not. Can we have the third slide, please? The next slide. We are also living the convergence of an economic cycle. Those of you who studied economy know of a man named Kondratiev. This is a Kondratiev cycle, and what you can see on your screen is that he broke economic cycles down into seasons according to nature. I love this. So there's a spring and a fall and a winter and a summer in terms of economic cycles. Each season has its characteristics where some things hold value and some things lose value, where interest rates climb or interest rates decline, where inflation is high or inflation is low. We now are in the spring of a new economic cycle. If you look at the lower left-hand part of your screen, you can see this. It is a very unsettling time because assets that we used to think held value are losing their value. Paper assets like stocks in companies, for example, and tangible assets like land, like water, like food, like metals. These are the things that begin to hold their value better in the spring of an economic cycle. Also in that YouTube video, I talk about this, so you can see more about that. So here's the point. Not only are we living the climate change that's happening, now an economic change is happening at the same time, and both of these are linked. Rob, can we please have the next slide up, please? They are linked to a cycle that a lot of people have never heard about. It is called the conflict cycle. Now, when I was speaking at the United Nations with my dear friend, my spiritual brother, my colleague, Dr. Bruce Lipton, we were invited to speak at the UN together as a team. And we shared the science that shows that cooperation is the fundamental rule of nature, not competition. And when we talked about conflict cycles, they were surprised because the thinking is that conflict just happens when it happens. There is a correlation between conflict and natural rhythms and natural cycles. I'm going to just do it at a very high level. The heart and the brain, human heart and human brain, are the strongest magnetic biomagnetic generators in the human body. The heart is much stronger than the brain. All right. When the magnetic fields of our earth are in flux, they influence the magnetic fields of the heart. And the net effect is that when the magnetic fields are strong, we are more cooperative, less aggressive, more willing to work together to solve our problems. When the magnetic fields are weak, it's the opposite of all that. We are vulnerable to conflict. What you see in this chart is if you look at the tops and the bottoms of these rhythms, they are directly linked to the solar cycles of our sun, where the magnetic fields ebb and flow, influencing the magnetic fields of the earth that ebb and flow, influencing human consciousness and our willingness to either cooperate or solve our problems through conflict. And you're seeing this very clearly in this particular rhythm. I could do other wars and you could see the same thing. Now, I want to be very clear. We are not slaves to this cycle. We always have choice. We can always choose. And the beauty of what you're seeing is not only are we vulnerable to conflict, but if you look at this closely, you will see that we are now in the greatest opportunity for peace that we will have or have had for a very long time, because the beginnings and the endings of the great wars in the past happened at the tops and the bottoms of those cycles. Where are we right now? If you look at that blue arrow, right there is the year 2020 on the top of that red hump that you're seeing right there. 2020 is a period of the lowest magnetic fields measurements, magnetic measurements for our planet. It is coinciding with the solar cycles. The sun is right now. We're at the end of solar cycle 24. We've yet begun solar cycle 25. Activity is little or... I know that my connection was just dragging, so I paused just for a moment. What it means is that the magnetic fields on the sun are either nil or they're very, very weak. That is influencing what's happening here on our planet. And there are a lot of scientific correlations between solar cycles and human coherence, social coherence, okay? So I want to be very clear about this. We are not slaves. We are now at a place, if you know where you are in the cycle, it is the opportunity to become a good listener, to extend the olive branch of peace, to give another the benefit of a doubt. This is true between nations. It's true between members of our society. It's true between anyone experiencing conflict. It's true with members of your own family, your husbands, your wives, your partners, your spouse, your kids, your siblings, your coworkers. Humans are influenced by these fields. So I know I'm speaking quickly because I want to get to the resilience of what we're talking about here, but I'm laying the foundation. This is no ordinary time in the history of our planet. Each of these cycles in and of themselves could create tremendous change. All three of them are converging right now. And you and I are witness to what is happening that we have not seen over 5,000 years of recorded human history. So if you're wondering what's happening, why do things seem so different now? This is the underlying cause. At a high level, we are experiencing the result of three natural rhythms that are converging in a way that we've never seen, again, in 5,000 years, creating the chaos. And the chaos is what happens when you try to think and live in ways that do not reflect what the cycles are presenting in your life. And once you begin to see this, it makes perfect sense of what we need to do next. So I'm going to stop with the explanation right there, Chauncey, and I'm going to ask you. First, did that make sense? And second, do you have any questions that I didn't cover you think that maybe our listeners might want to know more about regarding those cycles? And then we're going to get on to the resilience.
Yeah, no, definitely. I that graph is just so helpful, and I was wondering if you could speak just briefly about, you'll talk about the field and how we're actually a part of the field as opposed to being separate from it. So therefore it makes sense when you look at that graph that we are feeling within our lives and within our own, body systems, the intelligence of our cells. We can really feel that the electrical, the magnetic energy shifting and changing, and that can feel uncomfortable. So would that make sense as to why it's like as within, so without, as above, so below? And that could be why we're feeling so many shifts in our own lives right now.
Absolutely, Chauncey, because this is why I said what I said earlier. Our science has conditioned us to believe that we're separate from these influences and these effects. We document them, we watch them through telescopes, and we say, oh, isn't that interesting? What they're now beginning to understand is that we cannot separate our everyday experience from what's happening in the environment around us. So now we're talking about the physical environment. The environment, the magnetic fields primarily of the sun influencing the earth, and that in turn influencing through the neurons of the human heart, the way that we feel about ourselves. And what it does is it becomes very unsettling because old ideas and belief systems that worked in the system that we had before, because that system no longer exists, those ideas and beliefs are looking for new equilibrium. They're looking for a new harmony. Doesn't mean they're right, wrong, good, or bad. I'm not judging it here. It means that we are in the process of not seeking balance. It's not balance that we want, it's harmony. I want to make this distinction because in balance, nature doesn't like balance. In balance, nothing happens. If something is in perfect balance, nothing is happening. That's boring. Nature abhors balance. Nature wants harmony. So I live in a rural area, and our population of coyotes to rabbits is never in balance, but it always is in harmony. As more rabbits come available in a given season, all of a sudden we see more coyotes to keep that population in check. So nature's looking for harmony. You and I and all of my family viewing this, we are all seeking harmony in our lives in the presence of a system that is inharmonious right now because it's going through this change. This is the external physical environment. And this is the first thing that I want to talk to you about when it comes to resilience. And then we're going to move very quickly to the internal environment and finding resilience from our inner environment. So Chauncey, before I do that, I just want to honor your question. Does that help? Does that make sense, what I just said about, did I miss anything about the
No, most
the external
definitely.
environment?
And that was really great. It was sort of leading into the next thing I was going to ask, which is, from what I'm hearing, at the moment, there's going to be constant change. And so how can we adapt in healthy ways? What tools and techniques can we do? Is this where the resilience training comes in?
This is what's so important. And I'm just going to look right in the camera to my global brothers and sisters, to my global family. I love every one of you. I love you for living in this time, for all that you're doing to be the best version of yourselves, to create the best version of the world that's possible. And we're all in this together. That's why I wanted to share this today. So I'm going to begin a conversation that has been uncomfortable in the past when I've offered it. And there's a reason for that. When you know that the system is changing and you do not know where the system is going, it makes sense to be prepared. There is, in psychology, there is a phenomenon that is called normalcy bias. Some of you are familiar with this. Normalcy bias is where we as individuals have a tendency to average out all of the big changes in life. It's hard for us to embrace those changes. And when the changes are so big that they appear frightening, it's hard for us. So we tend to discount them. And because of that, we try to live our lives as if those changes are not happening. There are all kinds of examples in history of normalcy bias. When communities on a coastal town know that a massive hurricane is coming their way, all right? And there are people that will discount that. They'll say, you know, we've written it out before, we're going to write it out again, even though the National Weather Service is telling them this one's different. This one is different. It's stronger, it's faster. The ocean currents are warmer. And normalcy bias will say, you know, it's not going to be that big a deal. And those are the people who have been hurt or been killed We saw this happen in Katrina, for example. This was a very sad example. So the normalcy bias in the past. Now I'm going to talk about resilience. Resilience comes on different levels. It means different things to different people. Resilience happens in our physical environment. That's one form of resilience I'm going to talk to you about right now. It happens in our inner environment, that is mental, psychological, emotional, spiritual, and physiological. And I'm going to talk to you about that next. I'm going to do the physical environment quickly because there's so many other resources. I don't want to use our time to do this. But what I want to say is this: you've seen from this graph, you've seen from the chart, systems are converging. It makes sense to expect the unexpected. It makes sense to embrace the fact that this is not the ordinary time. This is no ordinary time in human history. It makes sense to expect extremes. And if we allow that deep truth to be present in our lives, it makes sense to prepare for those extremes, because the extremes are only a problem when we're not prepared. The big storms, the ice storms that happened every year in the American Northeast and in New England, they break power lines, people without power. They close roads. Trucks can't get through to deliver food to major metropolitan areas, sometimes for weeks at a time. Medical services aren't available. And people act surprised. And what we hear from some of the scientists who are dealing with this, they say, well, this is a storm that will only happen once every 50 years, so don't worry about it. Then the next year, the same storm happens again. And the next year again, you get 3 50-year storms within the period of 3 years. This has happened in the American desert Southwest. We had a 100-year rain a couple of summers ago here in the high desert of northern New Mexico. It washed out roads, washed out riverbeds. I mean, it was a mess. They said, don't worry, it's a 100-year storm. It won't happen again for another 100 years. The next year, the same thing happened. It makes sense to expect the unexpected. So when we talk about resilience, physical resilience, it makes sense to prepare. And when you're prepared, you are less stressed. And the last thing you want is to be stressed in a time of extremes, because the stress is what causes a drop in the immune response. You are less healthy when you are stressed in these extremes. So for that reason, I'm having this conversation with you. We've not seen the last shutdown from the last pandemic. If you're following the news in the last couple of days, we probably haven't seen the last pandemic. There's a flu that is emerging from Asia. Whether you believe in that or not, whatever the source is, whatever that means to you, the fact is that we are living these experiences, and we probably haven't seen the last of them. As a scientist, I can tell you we have not seen the last extreme snowstorm. We haven't seen the last bad hurricane. We have not seen the last big rainfall. And for all of these reasons, it makes sense to be prepared in your home so that you're not caught off guard, so that you can be responsible for yourself and for your family. So what I want to say to you right now, to make this very easy, everyone has a different level of tolerance when it comes to what you can and can't do without. In times of extremes, sometimes we don't have food, sometimes we don't have electricity, sometimes we don't have medical supplies, sometimes we don't have water. And it's up to you, you and your family. You have to make a determination. What is your tolerance for what you can and cannot live without? But what I've done, and just take a note, and we'll put this in the chat on Facebook. If you go to my website, there is a tab that is called Truth and Fiction. There's a little tab called Truth and Fiction. And if you click on that, additional resources is a button that comes up, and resource number 12 and 13 I've put up there for you today, and it's yours. What number 12 is a list of reliable sources for the kinds of things we're talking about. If you want backup solar electricity in your house inexpensively, I've got some references. More expensively, I've got other references. If you want food that can be stored for long periods of time, that is healthy food. The last thing you want is to eat bad food in a time of extremes. That's when you need your strength. These are vegetarian. Typically, you can add meat products if you would like. They'll stay on the shelf 25 years. Very easy. If you don't want to go out and build your own, it's a one-stop shop, very reasonable. I've given you that resource as well. Water storage, I've given you a way to these very cool 13-gallon blue bricks is what they're called, that are stackable, where you can store water in times of need. And it's one of the most vital resources that you'll ever have. Number 13 on that list, if you click on that, it's a very cool little food calculator where I've itemized the kinds of food that you can probably use. And I think it's for a family of four for 30 days. You can adjust it for whatever you need. And you put down what you have and it'll tell you what you need. And then you've got a shopping list so you know what to do. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but what I want to say is physical resilience is based upon a principle that is called the principle of spare capacity. This is a fundamental principle in any kind of resilience. So for your physical environment, the first principle of resilience is spare capacity. And when you're talking about your physical environment, those are all the necessities: electricity, food, water, medicine. There's a place to get medical kits on that list as well. So I've been criticized for this because people said, Greg, you're fear-based. From my perspective, I am a realist. I'm an optimist and I'm also a realist. I'm optimistic. We're all going to get through this and we're going to have a better world because of it. But we are the generation living it. That's my optimism. My realism says, hey, when the environment changes, it makes sense to do what we need to do so that we are honoring what the environment is showing us. This is a kind of resilience, and I want to talk to you about this, and we're going to go very quickly into the inner resilience. And Chauncey, I know I'm going longer than we wanted here, but I want to say this to our community. When we talk about resilience, the old way of thinking about resilience, traditional resilience is what it's called, is where we live our lives and then something happens that knocks us for a loop. A loss, the end of a relationship, an earthquake, a storm. And traditional resilience is our ability to bounce back from being knocked back, all right? It's the ability to bounce back, to find some level of normalcy, all right? There's another kind of resilience. And when we begin talking about this inner resilience, I know that part of what I'm doing here, I do have a course. It's a 6-module course. It is based upon the new principle of resilience. It's called adaptive resilience, which is different than traditional resilience. Adaptive resilience is where you live your life and you think and you build the parameters to honestly reflect what it is that's happening in the world. So you do this all the time automatically. You do it intuitively. Perfect example, if the weatherman says it's going to storm today, you might take a raincoat. That is adaptive resilience. It's not out of fear. It's just saying, hey, there's a chance of rain. I don't have to get wet if I don't want to. Adaptive resilience is where you make the changes that honestly and truthfully reflect the reality that you find yourself in. We are living a time of extremes. I just have to say that to you. It's not the time that we normally would expect. It is a brief period of extremes. The climate is going to continue to change. It's going to cool. The economic changes are happening. We're now moving into this spring where tangible assets and commodities are gaining in value, where other things are losing value. The conflict cycle is happening where we have the greatest opportunity for peace, as well as we are being most vulnerable to conflict. You're seeing that happen right now. So all of these things are happening simultaneously. Adaptive resilience is where you are prepared. And from my perspective, I don't see that as fear. I see it as a responsibility to myself, to my loved ones, my family, and as my global family. That's why I'm sharing this with you in the way that I am now. So that's the physical environment. So before we go into the inner environment, Chauncey, I'm just going to ask you to come back. We just covered a lot of ground, and I know I'm speaking quickly to honor the time, but I want people to have the things that they need. And this physical resilience in our community, maybe you've seen this as well. In the New Thought community and in the spiritual community, people really want to trust. And there's a deep trust. They say, I trust that I'll be taken care of. And often we are. But often we are because we have honored ourselves in relation to the environment we find ourselves in. So how did that sound to you? Did it make sense? Does it sound like a fearful thing to you?
No, not at all, because I think there
Okay.
is that importance to be able to acknowledge what is, and then look for tools and techniques that are going to be appropriate in the time, which is what you're speaking to us about today. And it's that I totally understand when you say you're an optimist and a realist, because we can't also ignore what is happening in the world, but we still want to be able to be like the phoenix rising through the, out of the ashes, or the hero's journey with Joseph Campbell. This is part of the journey of our soul and our spirit and being human, is that we get a call to leave, and then we have these trials that happen to us. It's like, well, how do we step into that, as opposed to run away from it and pretend that nothing's happening? How do we step up? And I feel that's what we're being asked to do right now, is to step up globally and as individuals. And I totally understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's especially difficult because some people say, well, these things are expensive. They can be, they don't have to be. On the list, I've given price ranges from top end to the bottom end. Not everyone. I know that the COVID-19 has really hit the global community very hard. In the past, we've maybe hit one nation or another, and other nations could step in to help. Our whole world is hurting right now. And when we are blessed with the opportunity to provide for ourselves and our families, we are often blessed with the opportunity to extend that even beyond our local family, and we can help other people when we have taken the steps to be able to help ourselves. It's very difficult to help other people if we are having the difficulties as well. So that's where that's coming from. So for the physical resilience, there are a lot of really good resources out there, and I know a lot of you have looked for these, but some people have said to me, I don't know where to begin, Greg. I don't even know where to begin. So my listener heard that. And what I've offered is, if you go to these resources, they will give you a template. You don't have to do everything on there, but it's a place to begin. And then you modify and make it fit for your circumstances, for your external physical environment. And you'll be glad that you did. Now, and by the way, I also want to say I have no relationship with any of these companies. I don't have any benefit whatsoever, other than knowing that you, my global family, may be better positioned to care for yourselves. Many of these resources I'm recommending because I've used myself. That's why I know the products are good. But I don't make any money on these. I don't want you to think I do. I'm just going to be really straight with you. That's where it is. I want to move quickly into the inner resilience, though, because this is where I do want to spend some time. So can we? Is this a good time to talk about that? Do you think, Chauncey? Should we?
100%. And I'm hoping that you might have a technique you can share with us, because you know that I do love to call on you to to guide us through something on the spot. So that would be amazing too, if we can put that in the mix at some stage.
So what I would like to do in the time that we have remaining, and I do want to take a few questions and have some time to interact with our audience, but this is important. So just a quick review. We're talking about resilience. We're talking about external environmental resilience, and I've given you some resources. I've shared with you what's causing the extremes, and from that you can see that we're in this. It's not something that's going to go away probably within our lifetimes. We are living the emergence of whatever this new normal is. To the degree that we can adapt to this normal, adaptive resilience, to that degree, life becomes much easier. Now, I want you to think about this, because there are a lot of people, if any of you are even watching mainstream news any longer, most people have stopped for good reason. But what so many people are doing is they're viewing this time of extremes as a little speed bump in the road of life. And they're saying, all we have to do is get over this speed bump and we're back on the main road and everything is cool. We can't go back to a world that no longer exists. And that is where the normalcy bias comes in. So we're in the change. We're not going to go back to a time where there was no change. So we might as well learn to thrive. And this is it. We don't want to just survive. We want to thrive. We want to be the healthiest, most prosperous, the happiest beings that we can be. And that's all possible if we adapt to what the world is showing us, rather than trying to live what we're comfortable with in a world that no longer supports that. Such a powerful concept. So when we talk about now personal resilience covers a lot of ground. It's more than I can do justice to in this quick 90-minute program. And for that reason, it's no secret, I have a course that I've developed. It's a 6-module course. Each module is devoted to one particular topic, and I'm going to go through those in just a moment. But it is all based upon adaptive resilience. This is from the Stockholm Resilience Institute. They are the pioneers in developing principles of adaptive resilience. So when it comes to personal resilience, what does that mean? Well, you know, and I know that we are multidimensional beings. We have many dimensions, and I don't mean higher dimensions you can't see. We have a physical dimension that needs to find resilience. We have an emotional dimension. We have a mental dimension. We have a spiritual dimension. We have a biophysical dimension. And all of those need to find their own kinds of resilience so that we in our entirety can be resilient from within to the changes that we're seeing in our outer world. So the physical resilience gives us what we need to live our lives and be at our best. And that's what I've just shared with you. The inner resilience is what this course is all about. It is dedicated in 6 modules to the psychophysical body and how to become resilient. In that body, the new discoveries of biology, of cell biology, new discoveries of stem cells. We're going to go through the whole course with you here in just a moment. The mental, the psychological, the emotional, and the physical resilience that it takes to find our new harmony. Remember, we're not looking for balance, we're looking for harmony in the context of the world that we find ourselves in now. Now, what I know is a lot of people are asking me about this course. That's why I wanted to combine that with everything else I'm talking about here. Some of you have already signed up for the course. Some of you will never sign up for the course, and I'll never see you again. And I want you to have something right now that you can use right now that will help you whether you take this course or not. We are all experiencing the stress of unresolved fear. We're being given reasons to fear 24/7 in the news cycles, friends, Facebook. You know, I mean, if you're watching Twitter, if you're watching Instagram, a lot of you have stopped. One person says one thing, another person says something else that's completely counter, and you feel like you're ripped in a million directions. What's true? What's not? Well, how do you know what's true and how do you know what's not? All of that creates stress. And the stress that we are experiencing actually depletes our immune system of all times, man, of all the times to want a strong, healthy, powerful immune system. I can't think of a better time to have it than right now. And in the presence of the stress that we are undergoing, some of it is conscious, some of it's subconscious. People are stressed in ways they don't know, and their immune system is taking a hit. Now, what I want to say to you just right off the bat about COVID-19 or the H1N1 that we are now being told is coming from Southeast Asia. It will be making its rounds again this year, and another round of flu, or any contagion that's out there. What I want to say to you is this: we are made for times just like this. Our bodies know what to do with the contagion. We have been here, as you saw, 200,000 years, and for 200,000 years, our bodies have known what to do with these contagions because they are wired to thrive within the presence of these contagions. But there's a catch, and here's the catch. The catch is you must love yourself enough, and I mean this. You must love yourself enough to give your body what it needs to be at its best so that it can do what it knows how to do in times like this. What does that mean? It means all the things you already know, but maybe have taken for granted in the past. It means you've got, when you put food into your body, don't just fill the space. Give your body the highest forms of life-affirming nutrition that you know is possible in the moment that it's available, whatever that is in the moment. Sometimes it's not always, if you're traveling 30,000 feet above the surface of the earth, sometimes a bag of nuts is the highest form of nutrition that I have, and I'm okay with that because I know that the next opportunity I have to honor my body with life-affirming nutrition, I will give my body exactly that. My body knows that, all right? So honor yourself with life-affirming nutrition. Movement, exercise is so important. It stimulates the immune system as well as the hormones that help you to keep from becoming depressed in this time of extremes. Okay, those things are important. Sleep is important. Relieving the stress is key. And what I want to do, I'm going to go through an exercise right now. It's right out of the course. It's an example of one of the things that we'll do in this course. It's an exercise that you can do. I want to say, if anyone is driving an automobile, if you're operating heavy machinery, please do not do this while you are doing anything that puts you in a position that's not safe. Please be in a safe place where you can focus on yourself, on your body. Science has found a direct link between the words that we use and the way our neurons fire in our heart as well as our brain, and what we think and what we're even capable of thinking about. Words determine not only what we think, but they determine what we're even capable of thinking about, because they determine how the neurons are wiring and firing together. As my dear brother Joe Dispenza would say, I know you've heard him say that, or Bruce Lipton would say the same thing. Lynn McTaggart would say the same thing, my dear friends and brothers, sisters, and colleagues. So words are very, very powerful. And for that reason, we're going to use some words and breath. Breath, I want you to know, is a language unto itself. Your body understands the nonverbal language of breathing. You use this before you ever learned to communicate through your vocal cords. When you combine words and breath, our ancestors have done this for thousands of years, not because they knew the science, but because it works. They created chants, they created mudras, mantras, hymns, prayers, based upon very powerful words and phrases that they linked a significance to. So this is what I want to say. When you say a word, that word means something to you, and that meaning is determined by your experience of what that word has meant in your life. And it may be different from the person next to you, even though you live in the same family. You can use the same word, and you can have two. I could use the word fear. And fear may be one thing to a father who fought in World War II and faced enemy bayonets, and to the children, fear, who have never seen war like that, fear may mean something different to them. It's just as powerful, it's just as meaningful. Doesn't diminish the impact, but it's a very different experience. So the point of what I'm saying is that we link the words that we use to our own experience of feelings. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to go through a little technique here. The Institute of Heart Math. Many of you are familiar with heart math. They are a pioneering research organization in Northern California. They are pioneering new studies of the human heart that go beyond the heart simply as a pump. And they, with their permission, I'm going to share a technique that they use. It is called attitude breathing. Attitude breathing. So let me describe it. And then Rob, not yet, but I'll ask you to bring up the slide, but let me describe the attitude breathing first. What the attitude breathing does is it combines these scientific principles of linguistics, the feelings that we associate with the words, with the language of the breath. And what I'm going to invite you to do is to choose a feeling that you'd like to change. And this isn't rehearsed. Obviously, we haven't done this before. So what I'm going to do, I think it's fair to say all of us are feeling some anxiety on some level. The anxiety comes from being given conditions that change and threaten our way of life with no way to resolve those conditions. So I think it's fair to say we're all experiencing a world in flux, a world in chaos. We don't know how it's going to come out, and that creates some level of anxiety in all of us. So I think it's fair to use anxiety in this exercise. The anxiety that we're feeling, I'm going to invite you to find a word that is the healer for that anxiety. So if you're not feeling anxiety, what would you like to replace your feeling of anxiety with? It can be a word or it can be a phrase. The folks at HeartMath have done a beautiful job of pairing these words. And one that I use almost on a daily basis is inner ease. Inner ease. So I replace the anxiety that I'm feeling with the word inner ease and a breath. So what I'm going to invite you to do, can we go ahead and bring up the slide? And we have a little music in the background just to average out any background sounds. I appreciate that. So what I'm going to invite you to do, acknowledging that we're all feeling some kind of anxiety right now. If we can ease that anxiety, we're strengthening our immune system. We're lighting up the rejuvenation of our hormone system. We are giving ourselves the opportunity for better sleep, better appetite, all because we're relieving some anxiety. And this is why I wanted to share this technique with you. So I'm going to invite you, if you haven't already, to close your eyes if you are in a place that is safe, and allow your awareness to move from the world around you to the world within you. I'm going to do the same thing with you right here. In 1991, scientists discovered neurons in the human heart, similar to those in the brain. And it's those neurons that we're communicating with right now. I'm going to invite you in a way that's comfortable to touch your heart center with a finger or two fingers or maybe a palm of your hand. And that physical touch will draw your awareness from your mind into this place in your body, into your heart, so that you can focus in your heart. And this is where the neurons that know what we're doing, the neurons, the intelligence of the human heart exists in those neurons and others. So I'm going to invite you to touch your heart center gently in a way that's comfortable for you. And as you breathe, and we'll breathe a little bit slower than usual. The purpose of a slower breath is to tell your body with that slower breath that you are safe. So as we inhale a little bit slower than usual, we'll do this together. What you're saying to your body is, I am safe. And as you inhale, I'm going to invite you either out loud or silently to yourself, with that breath that you inhale, to breathe in the words inner ease. And as you release that breath, release the anxiety that is in your body. Now, let's do this a few times right now. So the first breath, inhale, a little bit slower than usual. Inner ease. And release. You release the anxiety in your body. I release the anxiety in my body. Second breath, inner ease. I breathe inner ease into my body. As you release, just feel that anxiety melt from your body. Breathe again, inhale, inner ease. Inner ease. Inhale again. Release. And just feel the shift in your body as you breathe inner ease, as your breathing slows, as you release that anxiety and tension. I'm feeling it right now. Again, inner ease. Okay. With one more breath, I'm going to invite you to inhale inner ease. And as you release, give thanks for the ease with which you flow through your day. Thank you. Thank you for the ease of this day. Gently begin to open your eyes. Become present in your space. Okay. Now, I've had people say to me in the past, Greg, this is too easy, because we're conditioned to believe that things must be difficult for them to be effective. Nature is simple until we make it complex. Science is simple until we make it complex. Science describes our relationship with nature. What could be any more simple than breathing the breath of life at a slower pace, telling your body that you are safe, regardless of what's happening in the world around you? You're saying, in this place, in my domain, I am safe. And using the neuro-linguistic properties of the words and your experience of what you associate with that words to replace the anxiety in your body. You can do this if you're feeling fear. What is it that you'd like to replace that fear with? If you're feeling hurt because of loss, we are all losing something. We're losing a way of life. We're losing loved ones. We're losing families. We're losing relationships. People are losing marriages over the tension and the stress, the unresolved tension and stress of COVID-19. What would you like to replace the feeling of loss with? And this is a very, very simple technique: breath, language, feeling, focused in the neurons of the heart. And this simple technique was the one that I felt would have the most application for the most number of people. It's not linked to meditation. It's not linked to a religion. It is simply you honoring the way your body works through breath and word associations. All right, Chauncey, are you still with me? I know we went a little bit longer with that than we'd intended, but I want to take the time to honor our audience with something real that they can use the moment they click off of this. And I'm just going to ask you straight up, did you feel a shift in your body when you were doing that process?
Absolutely. And it's that sense of, like you said, that allowing the body to feel safe in the moment. And I really love the fact that you're focusing in on the languaging as well, because our dear friend, Darren Weissman, says, if you're feeling an emotion like anxiety or fear, he actually says, you ask yourself, would I ever choose to feel this way? Well, no, I wouldn't. So how would I choose to feel instead?
That's not what he usually says, Chauncey. What does he say and he says, do you want to feel this? What's the answer?
He does. He says, hell no.
Hell no.
Hell no.
Darren
Would you ever choose to feel this way? Hell no.
Yeah, Darren Weissman is a dear brother, a good friend. He has a technique called the Lifeline technique that I highly recommend. I know he's done a lot of work there in Australia, and I appreciate you just giving him a shout out for the work that he's done, Chauncey. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But I love it because you're all speaking the same language. So thank you for that. That was just incredible. That was incredible for me. And I love it when you share techniques with us as well, because you feel it viscerally through the cells of your body, and you know that it's exactly the right space to be, especially in this time. And your kind words about, I'm finding at the moment there are a lot of relationship shifts happening with people in my life as well. And so the fact that you touched on that, I know that that's going to resonate with a lot of people out there. And would it be okay if we touched on, because I'm also aware of the time and the fact we want to get to some question and answers, and
Sure.
just to know that people can type in their questions as well. We'll do our best to get to people, but please know that quite often your questions are answered within other people. But would you mind if we just quickly touched on the modules of the course off the back of that beautiful technique that you just taught us?
I would love to do it, Chauncey. And so what I want our viewers to know is that the purpose of me inviting you here today, it wasn't to sell a course. That's not what I'm trying to do. I want you to know that this deeper content is available. It is available for people that want that. It's 6 modules. Each module is 60 minutes. There's 3 live sessions that I will do, or Q&A kinds of sessions. We'll offer 2 modules a week, so the whole thing can be finished in, 2 modules a week, so the whole thing will be finished in 3 weeks. We begin offering it next week. It is finished. We begin on the 13th, I believe, is when this begins. And what I'd like to do, I just, if you're like me and you're thinking about a course, you're wondering, like, what is in this course? Have I seen it before? Is it something he's done before? And I want you to know the bulk of this course I've not offered anywhere in any other venue. There are elements such as the heart math technique that I have offered in other programs, but they have a different application. And I think you'll see that as we go through. So Chauncey, if you would be so kind as to lead us through the modules, and Rob, I have an earpiece that is falling out today. So Rob has been kind enough to, I didn't know he did this. He actually made a slide for each module. So we can go through this very quickly. I don't want to dwell on this, but I want people to know, just get a sense for what's happening. So Chauncey, you want to begin?
I would love that. I will read, if it's okay with everybody, I'll just read off my paper that I have here as it's a little blurred for me on the screen. So module 1, we'll briefly identify the 6 modules. And module 1, resilience begins in the heart, traditional versus adaptive resilience. So new discoveries reveal how the heart prepares our body for the emotional, psychological, and spiritual input to charge our batteries of resilience. I love that term so much. In this module, you will discover the resilience curve and the science that builds the foundation for your resilience practice, how your heart regulates your levels of sustained resilience, the non-verbal language that you use to communicate the instructions of resilience to your heart, and the steps of the simple techniques that your body will immediately respond to as you elevate your levels of personal resilience and the resilience curve in your life.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Chauncey. The only thing I want to say, resilience, physiological resilience does begin in the heart, and it begins with what's called heart rate variability, HRV. And as we learn techniques to increase heart rate variability, we are actually increasing our body's physical and physiological ability to be resilient in the presence of change. And the resilience curves will show us that. So thank you. I'm excited. I'd love to share this. And the first module really lays the foundation for everything that we do next. Can we go to the next module then?
Yeah, perfect.
It's very
so
module
module
on my
2,
screen as well. So yeah,
creating emotional resilience. So when the coping strategies that we develop early in life are successful, we commonly continue them into adulthood when even when they no longer work for us. I kind of call that the groove in the record, right? We get stuck on the needle keeps jumping, and yet we want to change it to a different tune. It is these once successful strategies that can sabotage our relationships, success, and dreams by creating precisely the opposite results of what we hope to achieve. I know there are so many people that are hearing that and resonating with that right now. In this module, you will identify the 7 signs of unhealthy coping strategies, how they may appear in your life today, and the 8 proven techniques to supercharge your personal resilience template. Brilliant, Greg. Just brilliant.
Yeah, well,
it's like the scaffolding.
There's a worksheet that goes with each of these modules. And after I designed the course, I took the course. And what I found for myself is when we identify these unhealthy coping strategies, our normalcy bias tends to lead us to accept unhealthy coping strategies for reasons that we believe are the exceptions in our lives. And if we are very honest with ourselves, and part of this module is a technique to open the honest communication with ourselves so that we can honestly identify our unhealthy coping strategies, not to judge them, but to replace them with really healthy coping strategies. So thank you. Thank you for that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, like finding our blind spots, right? Releasing that energy so we can bring it into the now. I love it. Okay, so module 3, the meaning of your life, creating spiritual resilience. Thanks, Rob, for putting that up. Society teaches us to view our lives as the random events that become the story of our loves, losses, successes, failures, joys, disappointments, jobs, careers, and family dynamics. Is it possible that a hidden thread weaves its way through the fabric of our experiences, a thread that we can identify and use as the gateway to deeper levels of meaning in our lives? In this module, you'll discover your life as more than a series of random relationships and events. Using your resilience template, which we would have learnt in the earlier modules, you'll discover how to apply your discovery in the strategy to achieve your highest levels of personal resilience.
Yeah, this was, it was very intense and very healing for me to put this particular module together. One of the places where I did the research was with people who have lived very difficult circumstances, such as hostages. For example, the hostages that were taken in Lebanon in the 1980s. One of those holds the record for over 2,000 days being held hostage in a political environment that was very difficult. And when the hostage was released, he was actually in pretty good shape. And they interviewed him to say, what did you do? What did you do to help you get through every day? And I researched multiple kinds of extremes like that, not all hostages, but that is an example, and drew from those these very powerful principles of what life means to us and the role that meaning plays in our resilience. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so module 4, hope theory, creating psychological resilience. When we hear the inspiring stories of people who have triumphed over adversity or survived unthinkable loss, the first question we ask is, how did they do it? So true, so true. The answer to this question is the key to this module, the emerging science of hope theory and the role it plays in our strategy for personal resilience. In this module, you'll discover how to apply the power of hope theory to stack the deck of success in your favour. Using your resilience template, you'll recognise the new horizons that are possible, create the strategies to achieve those goals, and apply the tools to transcend the self-imposed limitations and difficult relationships in your life.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'm going to acknowledge there's a delay in our broadcast, and I've spoken over you twice, and I apologize for that. So I want to acknowledge that, and I'll do my best to be mindful. I'll do my best to be resilient when it comes to the delay. So when I was researching this, I was surprised how many people are not aware of the emerging science that is called hope theory. It's more than a wish that something will happen. There has to be a very specific strategy to create the outcomes in our lives. And in this module, we actually have an assessment sheet that we have the opportunity to do for ourselves to find out what our levels, where we need more work. Do we need more work in the strategy? Do we need more work in the theory itself? What that idea means. So it's a lot to do in this 1 hour module, and I'm confident that we're going to get through all of that together. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. Okay, module 5, know thyself, creating mental resilience. The foundation for all forms of personal resilience are found in the 2 words written over the entrance to the ancient Greek temple of Delphi, know thyself. I love this, Greg, so much already. Through the resilience techniques that we practice in our lives, we become our own oracle of wisdom. The better we know ourselves, the more we discover how much we've outgrown the boundaries, limitations, and potentials we have been led to accept for ourselves in the past. In this module, you'll learn the science-based technique of non-verbal communication and the intelligence of your heart's neural network, and how to apply this technique to transcend the limits that have defined you in the past, I should say.
Yeah, this was, I spent time in Greece at in Delphi at the temple of the oracle. And some of you may have known this, or if not, maybe you've seen it, but the oracle, the cavern itself is no longer accessible. But it is where the oracle, who was believed to be a feminine oracle, a female, who was supported by males, would go into this very specific spot where there's a deep crevasse into the earth. And they're not sure exactly what happened because it's no longer accessible, but she would be able to know things and to say things that deeply inspired those that came to her for advice. And so many times the records show that she knew that the answer was within the people that were asking. And this is what, the Niels Bohr, the great physicist, said the same thing. He said, every great and deep difficulty bears in itself its own solution. It forces us to change our thinking in order to find it. What the new science is showing us is that we're literally wired for that kind of exploration and self-exploration if we understand how to tap the chemistry and the wiring. And that's what this module is all about. And it leads directly into the culmination of module number 6. So if you
I love it. Thank you. One of my favorite quotes that I remind myself of, I have a picture and it says, "You already know the answer." And that really helps me. So thank you so much. That's exactly
you're welcome.
Perfect. Module. So module 6, wired to thrive, creating biological resilience. From human evolution and genetics to the new science of neurocardiology, the bridge between the brain and the heart, modern science has overturned 150 years of thinking when it comes to the way we think of ourselves, our origin, and perhaps most importantly, our potential. In this module, Gregg, you are going to share with us the latest discoveries in stem cell technology, including a newly recognized class of stem cells, unlike those known in the past. It's very exciting. And how to awaken them for healing and rejuvenation at any age. Also, the latest discoveries in the controversy between steady state and high intensity interval training and the implications for hormone replacement and production, stem cell regulation, and overall resilience. So don't miss the opportunity to discover why you're not what you've been told and more than you've ever imagined. So great.
This module actually was originally the first module that I was going to use to lay the foundation for everything that we're doing in the course. One of the discoveries is so new, it happened while I was developing this course. And I wanted to leave this for the end. New discoveries are telling us about ourselves in ways that simply are not being shared in the mainstream, telling us that we are soft technology, that we are such powerful beings. 50 trillion cells in every human. Each cell has about 0.07 volts of electrical potential that we regulate through our breath and through consciousness for our immune system, and the new class of stem cells that can be awakened at any age in our lives. What traditional science has said is that stem cells decline with age. Now we know that is not necessarily true. And this is why it's such a really exciting, very, very powerful module to close the course, but it opens the door to the workshop of life. Because for me, once we understand the operating system of human resilience on all of these dimensions, and we apply that through the physiology of this magnificent soft technology, what we find is that we are deeply empowered in this world where we're being taught to fear. We're being taught that we need something outside of us to make us feel safe in the world. We need a chemical in our body, or we need a wire or a chip to level the playing field of what's happening. Science doesn't support that. What the science says is that we are the technology. We are that chemical, those wires and those chips. And as we embrace the deep truth of what it means to be fully human, it empowers us to go into this world, no matter what's happening, and love freely, and to imagine and create the new world that's emerging. And that's why I think human resilience has to be one of the foundations for that new world. So thank you for leading us through that so skillfully, better than I could have done Chauncey. You're really good at this. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being the translator of that wisdom, that innate wisdom that we have within us. You know, that's you are the translator for us. And that's what this course is really showing. So I'm really looking forward to doing it. There are so many things in there that lit me up inside. And I'm like, yes, perfect. Yes, that's what I need. And also to know that when we work on our own personal resilience, the ripple effect that it can have to other people around us is massive. And I believe that that is being part of being a human being. That's part of our responsibility. So thank you for that. Would we have time for some quick Q&A?
So I'm going to ask our producers here, either Rob or Cher, if you so kindly could whisper in my ear, if we go beyond this 90-minute, if we go beyond by 5 or 10 minutes, is that okay for you? Or do we have a hard out at the bottom of the hour?
All good.
It's all good.
Oh, the voice of God.
So let's, I just heard it.
Yeah.
let's Chauncey, let's take, I'm going to let you choose. People have written in some questions. I'm going to invite you to, and ask the question. I will be as concise as possible.
Okay,
lightning
that's
round,
perfect.
lightning
Thank
round.
you. Yes. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so the first question is about meditation, which is perfect. Please forgive me on the pronunciation of this name. Shalini, I believe it is asking you, Greg, I would want to know if a person lacks coherence completely, can he or she build it up through pranayams or meditations? And says thank you. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a good question, and the answer surprises some people. I've been asked this before, because the truth is that we are always in some level of coherence. So it's not that anyone can have no coherence. We all have some coherence. We optimize our experience, we optimize our system by building greater levels of coherence, greater degrees of coherence. The primary coherence that many people are talking about now is based upon this new discovery of the neurons in the human heart, bringing those neurons into coherence with the neurons in the brain. Now, the reason this is so important is because once the heart and the brain are in an optimum level of coherence, and this is a state that can be measured, it's a frequency between the heart and the brain that's measured. It's a very low frequency, 0.1 hertz, 0.1 hertz is the optimum frequency. It happens to be a fundamental magnetic frequency of the field line resonance of the planet we live on. So when we harmonize the heart and the brain with that 0.1 hertz, not only are we harmonizing our heart and our brain, but that harmony is bringing into harmony all of the systems within the body and bringing the entire body into harmony with a greater body that we call our planet. So this is where our healing begins, when the system finds that balance. The question about pranayama and breath, it's very important. I do a lot of pranayama myself, a lot of breath work. What we have found is that there are different ways to access coherence in the body. So there are different meditative techniques. I have not experienced every one of them, so I cannot say that meditation in general increases this harmony. There may be some meditations that do. What I will say is working with the scientists at the Institute of Heart Math for over a quarter of a century now. I've worked with them. I'm not their employee, but we are friends. We've toured together. We've laughed together. We've cried together. And they have given me permission to share a lot of their research. When we talk about this technique of breath and focus and emotion to create that harmony, it's not truly a meditation in the traditional sense of meditation. If we were going to call it a meditation at all, I think we would have to call it a heart meditation, but it is not a traditional form of meditation. And I think that's where the appeal begins with so many people, is because it is a science-based technique that builds upon traditions that we find in many of our ancient and indigenous traditions. Native North American, South American, from the Andes Mountains, the time I spent in Tibet with Tibetans, with the Buddhist men and women in the monasteries, they all, the yogis and the mystics in Nepal and in India, they all are using elements of these techniques to harmonize the heart and the brain. So pranayama may be a part of that. It can be. But the key is to establish 0.1 hertz between the heart and the brain. And I think we're still learning what techniques will help us to achieve that in the best way. So long answer to a short question. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is in two parts. One's a question and one's a thank you. What does it take to survive? Everyone is different. Some experiences take a lifetime to heal, especially when it's the loss of a child, no matter how old that child is. And this is from Rebecca. It's Rabakah. Rebecca. Your posts, then also they say, your posts are the greatest, Gregg. Put this out there for everyone that has had this experience. So obviously maybe this person has lost a child. It's so hard. Peace be with others also. Thank you, Gregg, and all. Bless.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Chauncey, for that question. The answer to that question is probably beyond what I can do justice to in a few moments here, because the experience of human loss is one of the most mysterious experiences, probably one of the least understood, although it is the most common. Because the truth is that we will all lose in our lives at some point the things, the places, the people, the pets, the relationships that we love and cherish the most and the deepest. We will lose those things, and our society really doesn't prepare us very well for that loss. We cannot change the loss. All we can do is change the significance that we give to the loss. And it is through emotional resilience, spiritual resilience, psychological resilience, mental resilience, and physiological resilience that we redefine what the loss means to us. As we begin to give new meaning to what it is that we've lost, still honoring the deep relationship we have with who or what it is that we have lost, as we begin to change the way we think and feel, what happens is our neurons begin to wire differently, and that difference is reflected in our perception of the loss. We don't want to forget, because those people, places, and things are a part of our history. The key to our mastery is to embrace the loss while transcending the hurt. So I'm going to get into something that I didn't think we'd get into here, but I'll just say this. One of the aspects of this mystery is the deeper the hurt that we experience in our loss, the more we discover our capacity to love. I had this conversation when I was with the monks and the nuns in Tibet. And what they helped me to understand is that it's only through the depth of our hurt, when our family is ripped away from us or our loved ones are torn from us, and we can't even describe what that is. We have to reach so deep into our being to find the capacity for the love to transcend the hurt. It's through the depth of our pain that we discover our capacity to love. So as we begin to embrace loss from that perspective, it helps us to transcend sometimes the anger or the injustice of having someone taken from us before we're ready for that to happen. So it's, again, to really honor this question, I think is beyond what we can do in the scope of this brief conversation, but I hope that has helped a little bit. whoever asked the question, Rebecca, if you can bear in mind that the depth of your hurt in whatever loss you're experiencing, and I'm just speaking to you directly, it is teaching you about your capacity to love, perhaps in ways that you did not even know were possible. And I'm not saying it has to happen that way. I'm saying many of us discover our capacity to love in this way. So thank you for that, Chauncey. That is a very important, it's a very big question.
I love that. And, as you know, like when I lost my mother about 5 years ago now, and she had a 3-day prognosis, and she actually lived 3 weeks from that day. And being in that process, I didn't know the capacity that I had to be able to survive and find resilience through that. It's unimaginable until you're there. And so everything that you've just said hit me at such a core space. So I also want to thank Rebecca for asking that question, because so many people will be sitting in that space and we really don't know our own strength until those moments sometimes. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And I want to thank you for acknowledging that. And it was with my mother that I learned some of what I have just shared, because we're all in this together. My mother is still alive, but she no longer knows me. She no longer knows herself. She doesn't know who she is or what the world is all about. And I came home. Actually, I was on a flight from Australia, from Sydney to Dallas, a beautiful flight. I came home and I landed, and my heart began beating so fast, and I could not slow it down, an irregular rhythm. And the doctors thought it was because of the flight from Australia to the US that I had some kind of an embolism or something like that. And this went on for 3 days, or 4 days and 3 nights. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't get my heart rate down below about 120, 125 beats a minute, and then it would go up from there. I tried everything I knew, breath techniques, yoga. I tried supplements to widen my capillaries, L-arginine, things, nothing worked. And when I went to an emergency room and they ran all the tests, they said, Mr. Braden, you are not only healthy for your age, they said, you're healthy for a man any age. They said, there's nothing wrong with you. And a nurse, a woman, a female nurse walked in the room and asked the question, what's happening in your life? And I started to answer her with the words, I'm losing my mom. And I couldn't even get those words out of my mouth. And I was sobbing, but it was a mystery because she's still alive. And the nurse said, no. She said, you will lose your mom twice. You will lose her once to all the memories that you have ever had that you can share with her together. And you will lose her again when she dies and leaves this world. She said, you are in grief that is not resolved, the grief of the loss of your mother as you've known her in the past. And as soon as she said that, my heart slowed down, and it opened the door to a deeper capacity for me to love my mom and accept her as she is, even though we can't share those experiences. So we're in this together, and I'm sharing through these experiences and all of my work, what I've learned to be true. And I learned from a lot of my listeners, a lot of my audience. So loss is a tough one, Chauncey, and thank you for acknowledging that. You. I think we have time. You want to do one more? Let's do one more.
One more? Okay. Yeah. So hang on a sec. Let me go through them. I'll make sure okay. So Danielle is saying, sometimes when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to believe that you're resilient, strong, and capable of moving on. Amen. We all can attest to that. How do you begin healing and changing your perspective from this difficult place? That's from Danielle Gregg.
Danielle, that is such a beautiful, awesome question. And Chauncey, it's a good question to wrap this conversation. Because for us to feel that we are resilient, we have to have a knowledge, we have to have a knowing that resilience is possible. The new discoveries, and I'm sharing a lot of those in all of my workshops, my books, you'll see it in this course. The new discoveries are telling us that we are literally wired to thrive, not just survive, that we are wired to thrive in times of extremes like no other form of life. We are the only form of life that is known to exist on Earth today that can consciously self-regulate our own biology at will, on demand. What that means is that we're the only form of life that we know of today on Earth that can consciously sit down in a moment in time and choose to feel, to think, to breathe in very precise ways that unlock the power of our immune system to transcend whatever contagion is out there, that light up the longevity enzymes in the cells of our body, so that although we move forward in time chronologically, we move backwards in time biologically. Our body has been present for X number of years, but the biology, the markers actually look younger than the physical body. We're the only form of life that can do that. We are the only form of life. We're the only form of life that can consciously choose to self-regulate our heart rate variability to give us greater resilience in the presence of whatever life gives to us. We're the only form of life that can consciously create the resilience to a virus or a contagion at will, on demand. And we're not taught this. We're taught that we are fragile, that humans are somehow this fragile, imperfect, scourge on the earth is what we're actually, I've heard this on the news. And that we need all of this external stuff to make us feel safe in the world that we live in. And the truth is that all that external stuff, all of the high-tech gadgets, from lasers and radar and the internet, Bluetooth, everything that you're seeing out there, it mimics what we already do in our cells. We are highly advanced, technologically sophisticated, soft technology, and the beauty is you don't have to know any of it to benefit from it. We are mysterious beings of a mysterious origin, of emotion and thoughts and imagination outpictured through this physical body. And the beauty is you don't have to know any of it. You don't have to know any of that, but it helps if you're going to change the way you think about your body and your life in the world. If you need encouragement to say that I have what I need to get through this, it helps to see the new discoveries that reveal the astonishing, magnificent beauty of what it means to be fully human. And once we really begin to get that, teach it to our kids in the schools, embrace it in the society that now is emerging, more than ever, we're being asked, we're being challenged. What role does our body play in the presence of what the world is showing us? And the new discoveries are giving us new ways to answer that. I can't think of a more exciting time to be alive. Human resilience, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physiologically, and in our environment, all come to play. And it is a beautiful place where all of this comes together in science, spirituality, and social policy. And I think we're living that place right now. So I hope that was that answered that question. Okay, Chauncey, if you think that that's a good place to maybe honor our host. We've gone over about 15 minutes. But what I just want to say to my audience, once again, thank you all so much for making us, all of the people behind the scenes, Chauncey and myself, a part of your day today, whenever you're seeing this. Chauncey, thank you for starting your day by leading us through this body of information. And I hope that people have enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed sharing it. And I hope that every one of you, I'm just going to look at you right now, I hope that you found something meaningful, deep, that you can apply in your life, that you've heard something that will help you to make sense of what we're seeing in the world and to become the best version of yourself in the world that's unfolding. Attitude breathing, I do it at least once a day. I do it first thing in the morning. I do it if I'm going to have a difficult phone call. I do it after somebody sends me a text saying all the stuff they're saying about COVID-19. You'd be amazed, even when you don't know you're stressed, how you can release that stress. So thank you all. For more information about the course, go to my website, greggbraden.com. It's Greg with 2 G's. My mom gave me 2 G's, so I'm not a Gregory. 1 G is a Gregory, 2 G's is just a plain old Greg. And you can find more information about the course. It does begin on the 13th. And I'm excited to share this with you. We've never shared this with anyone else, and we're doing it ourselves so that we have the freedom to share it with you the way that I really want to share it with you. So thank you all for that. So everyone in South Florida, I won't name your names or give away your location. Everyone in Southern California, I won't give you away either. Rob and Cher behind the scenes, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, Chauncey and Sydney. Thank you all for making this possible. I love you all, and just our global family, we love you. Mwah. Take good care, be safe, and know there's a beautiful world emerging and you're part of it. So let's build that world.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody.